Tonight, our I-Team takes us to a separate piece of Illinois among the rural areas well beyond Chicagoland that for weeks now have existed under the same COVID restrictions as big cities, despite far fewer coronavirus cases. Our investigative reporter Chuck Goudie looking at whether Governor Pritzker's new regional relief plan will help them.
Since the coronavirus crisis began, all 102 counties in Illinois have been painted with the same brush by the Pritzker administration. From tiny Hardin County in southern Illinois with less than 5,000 residents to Cook County with more than 5 million. Tonight, the I-Team travels to Lee County, 100 miles west of Chicago, a place their leaders consider a separate piece of the state. The Rock River rushes right through picturesque Lee County, population 34,000, and through Dixon, the county seat. Since lockdown day in March, the river has been the only thing running as normal.
We're operating like zero right now.
Mike Veneer talking about his family jewelry store, started 75 years ago by his grandfather and uncle right after World War II.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Mike Veneer is also on the Dixon City Council. Now Dixon is mostly shut down by less than 50 COVID cases in the entire county, and no one has died.
We are striving to get back to some sense of new normal.
It's a different picture over here in rural America than in Chicago.
Dr. Pradip Nag is chief medical officer here at Dixon's Hospital, standing ready for a COVID surge that hasn't come. According to state health data analyzed tonight by the I-Team, it is Metro Chicago that accounts for 90% of the state's coronavirus cases and 90% of the state's COVID deaths.
If you look at Illinois and you just look at the IDPH map that of the number of cases that Illinois has, and you can actually clearly see where the densities are.
Dixon's best-known tourist attraction is this house, Ronald Reagan's boyhood home. The Reagan family moved in here 100 years ago this year. Reagan himself was 9 years old at the time. The family paid $15 a month in rent. It was also right after the world's worst health pandemic, the so-called Spanish flu. Here in Dixon and everywhere else, that was a time long before social distancing, when there was still a corner drugstore, but also no drugs to treat the virus, and more than 23,000 Illinois residents died. A century later, a different virus, and even with better health care, there are similar questions.
You think there should be a separate carve-out in this kind of a matter for smaller towns?
That seems to be that's the direction that we're moving.
I think different areas could make recommendations to loosen both the restrictions on businesses and the restrictions on travel.
When we interviewed Dixon Republican Tom Demmer on Monday, he was preparing to present Governor J.B. Pritzker with a joint plan by Lee and Ogle counties for an immediate several-stage reopening.
The option of returning to normalcy doesn't exist.
But yesterday, before receiving the Lee-Ogle plan, Pritzker announced Restore Illinois that puts both counties in the same region as urban and more deeply infected Rockford. Relief not possible for anyone in the state until at least next month.
It should be informed by the data that you find in your community and what common sense steps can you take to limit your own risk without having an across-the-board closure.
Even before the governor's announcement, some in Lee County urged restraint.
We have neighboring counties with much larger numbers, and they're our neighbors, so that could impact us very easily if people don't heed the stay-at-home order. But I wouldn't be in favor of doing anything at this very moment.
We've been through it a month and a half, and we haven't been seeing the rise like some other cities have been. I feel like it feels a little unfair.
We went into this saying if we lose one business, that's one too many.
Do you have a feel for how many you're going to lose if this continues this way?
30% of your small businesses could fail. We just think it's time to start moving forward into the next phase of recovery.
Tonight, Lee and Ogle County leaders have finished this reopening plan of their own, despite Governor Pritzker already having announced his. Their two-county plan would allow non-essential businesses to reopen faster there with what they call strict limitations on safety measures and occupancy. Their plan to be handed to the governor's office this week. Chuck Goudie, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.